All right. I believe we are live for the 5th episode of Ask Pastor Tim. Welcome, everyone. We're going to certainly give a few moments for those who will be jumping on to jump on, and then we'll get started here in just a few moments. Boy, this is our 5th episode, and we are excited about tonight's topic. I have with me my sister Nicole Hawkins of WordSpoke Media, and we're really chomping at the bits to get going here. So remember to like, to share, and to ask your questions, make your comments in the chat. We have some monitors, we'll see them, and if we can get to them tonight, we will. If we don't, we will still answer those questions. You can certainly listen to the broadcast again. It'll be on this page for certain, and we're doing it on Facebook, on Instagram as well. And you'll also be able to get any of the episodes on YouTube. Getting Clear with Tim Jones on YouTube. In fact, that's where I would send you to listen to any of the other episodes that we've done. If you have not listened to those, or if you have not watched those videos, I encourage you to do so. The first, Ask Pastor Tim, we talked about mental wellness with Antonio the artist, and there were some really significant things that were shared, and he shared a little bit about his testimony. It was powerful. The second Ask Pastor Tim we did was with Joel Maldonado of Bring the Light Joel.
Yes.
Yeah, and we were talking about the mass shootings, man, and just how that's affecting our country, how that's affecting people, how that's affecting you and I. And you got to know that it is affecting all of us. And so we had some really key insights that were shared in that second episode of Ask Pastor Tim. The third episode we did, we talked about perversion. That word perversion and how it has affected our lives, how it has affected our culture. What is perversion? We defined it. From the dictionary point of view, and then we defined it spiritually so that we can understand it, what it is and how it affects us. And so I encourage you to go listen to that. And then the fourth episode, I had my daughter Jewel with me, and we talked about relationships and the effect of things like mental illness on relationships. We talked about how young people who are waiting, and some struggling with relationships, and some really just looking and trying to find, the one for them. And in many cases, a lot of our young girls are disappointed because, they see guys who are compromising, especially, and I'm talking about those who are living a certain kind of life. They have certain standards, and so guys aren't stepping up to the plate like they ought to be as a whole, right? And I'm going to talk specifically about that, not tonight, but another time. We're going to talk about the state of manhood. It's crucial, and man, that's another day. So yeah, you can see any of those episodes on YouTube. Getting Clear with Tim Jones on YouTube. All right, so I think we are ready to jump into this now. Let me give a little background here on why even we're doing this topic here tonight. In the world we live in right now, okay, we're coming on the heels of a pandemic. And in many cases, it's still going on in some places around the world. I often talk about the residue that has been left from the pandemic. I call it pandemic fever. And I define it as the increase in fear, doubt, confusion, and uncertainty. We can all acknowledge that there has definitely been an increase in fear, doubt, confusion, and uncertainty.
Right.
And you don't just move on from that.
Right.
Okay? You have to deal with that, because that becomes a form of trauma. It helps to propagate trauma in our lives. And so many of us are still traumatized by the events of the past 3 years. That is the solid truth. Okay? Now, we will see that play out more and more as we go farther, as we get farther from the pandemic. And things start to happen. As we begin to recognize and see that things, not only that they have changed, but they have shifted, and we are in another season. We're in another time zone. We're in another dispensation. We're in another era. Okay? And so when we really recognize that, for some people, they may recognize it a little too late. We wanted to have this conversation tonight to alert you to the devices and to the plans of the enemy to not just control your mind, but to actually take it over. Okay? And so this is a necessary conversation. We see people doing things, and it is obvious that their minds are not their own. Okay? I was listening to a 911 call from, I think it was somewhere, Miami or somewhere. This lady called 911, okay, and reported that she had just killed her 6-year-old.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, that's just a part of it, though. But that's a part of it. Here is the thing: her voice was so calm. There was no erratic behavior. There was no screaming. There was no crying. She was even tone and calm as she explained what she did. And when the 911 operator asked her, how did she kill the child? She said, I stabbed her in the chest, and then she explicitly explained how she killed her 6-year-old in a calm, collected voice. And the Holy Spirit began to speak to me and said, that is not her. There is no mother in their right mind, first of all, who's going to do that. Second of all, who's going to be that calm and collected about it. She obviously was in another state of mind. And so that's the kind of stuff that's happening. Now, that's one incident. That is happening all over the world.
It's just too much.
Okay, in one way, shape, form, or fashion. And so it was, to me, it was a sign of the times. It was a sign of what's to come. It was a sign of where we are in terms of how we handle and deal with the mental abuse that has happened, okay, to people all over the world. And I use that terminology, mental abuse, because anytime someone is controlling your thinking, that's abuse.
Yeah.
Because we weren't meant to be controlled. We were designed to dominate everything, but not each other.
I think in this pandemic, and I'm going to be really careful when I say this, I felt like, there were different parts of me that when it started, I was like, okay, there's no grid for this. Just like when 9/11 happened, there was no grid. And I wasn't in New York, but I was, that was traumatic to me. I think that people, because, domestic violence went up. I don't know if you know that. It almost doubled during the pandemic. And I think people, this is what I said to somebody once, the best and the worst of people, whatever's in this root that's inside will come out. Right. Excuse me. And I think, truthfully, whatever was in you will be magnified because you're trying to just run your lane, and now you feel like the lane, everything has closed in. And I think there was no preparation for the mental, not illness, but the mental backwardness, if I could say it that way, that was coming with the pandemic. I think everybody was so concerned, which is good, I need to wear a mask, I need to stay 6 feet from you, I need to be careful, but the mental perspective of isolation that would come.
Yeah.
I think it led to what you're hearing now. And I'm not blaming the pandemic for that lady's decision.
Right.
I'm saying there was no grid on how do we handle this time, because now they're calling it the Great Reset. Well, what does that mean? So I think, in essence, there's a level of depression, which we've talked about before, and trauma that we can't even put words to because we don't understand. Our world literally isolated, and it just changed, and we leaned more online than we did with each other in a healthy way, and there was no, and for some people there was no healthy way to deal with it. Mm-hmm. And I think I think even just the sickness of our country, the issues of our country got amplified. I mean, it felt like everything our President Trump did got amplified. Every racist comment seemed to hurt more. Sure. And I think the isolation of that kind of thing that was going on, it brings a numbness, and you sleep away. You know, so I feel like that has people who didn't understand how to deal with this and protect their mind and stay connected, no matter how bad it got, because there's no one I know that escaped this 3 years unscathed in any way.
In any way, yeah.
In any way, and I think there's a shifting. I think we're in the wilderness, and we're painting the sand green, and I feel like that's kind of like really what has happened, and we're eating sand and calling it water, and it's not. It's sand.
Yeah.
And so yeah.
Yeah. And so and you know, facing the reality of where we are in our country. But not just our country, but where the state of the world is, where the human being is, the state of the human being, and to assess the state of the human being, you have to assess the state of the human mind.
Right.
So, what state is the human mind in? Because that's where the masses are.
Yeah.
Right. Those who pull themselves aside, those who adopt a different way of thinking that's based upon something that is rooted and grounded in truth, they have an opportunity to separate themselves from the masses and how everybody else thinks, right? And what everyone else subscribes to, what moves everyone else, what makes everyone else sad, what makes everyone else irate, what makes they get a chance to pull themselves away from that because they subscribe to a way of thinking that's different. If you do not subscribe to a way of thinking that is different from the masses, then you're going to be subject to the same things that the masses are subject to.
Right.
And so if you're talking about the church, then that means that, and we know this to be true already, that means that statistics in the world are just like, or rather statistics in the church are just like statistics in the world. There's no difference. Right. Why? Because they really haven't subscribed to a different way of thinking. They still think the same way, right? Yeah, God saved me. He saved my soul, pulled me out of a burning fire, and delivered me and set me free. But I still think the same way. That's not deliverance. When deliverance takes place,
you are a totally different person.
You are a different person. It's like the egg. Okay? Once you crack that puppy and put it on that heat, it changes.
Right, you can't put the yolk back in the egg.
You can't put the yolk back in the egg.
There's some people who are cracked who cannot go back in, and they're trying to. And I mean, I've been through some crazy stuff myself. I think the key is to not lean on how the world and go, that's okay. Because I started to do that. I was like, all right, you know what? For the first time, no, that doesn't work. There's an old school term from IHOP KC. It's called it the upside down kingdom, and other people have said it of faith, but it's really true. You can't walk like everyone else. Yeah. You have to make a decision that is this, because I remember saying to somebody in the middle of the beginning of the pandemic when people were dying left and right, we're all like upset, and then people we love are getting affected. And I told them, you're going to either this faith works or it doesn't. You cannot make the decision that this trauma is it. I've seen people walk away from the faith. I've seen people walk away from marriages.
Sure.
You know what I'm talking about. Or friendships or things, and just write off. And you can't do that. You have to say that, just like in the past, remember, every era has ups and downs, and we're now having to make the decision that we cannot be like everyone else. I can't go drinking to get it doesn't work. And I've already tried that in my youth, and it didn't work. It didn't work then. It was fun, but I stopped. And I'd rather be sober and feel the pain. I don't want to be numb to the pain, but I don't want to also pretend like I'm not in pain. There's like this thing where everybody wants to be real. Like the new thing that came out to me was live your truth. Like, you know, and you have to grasp. You can't just live your truth. You got to grasp something that is truer than you, that has more honesty and more rawness than you. Otherwise, you're going to cling to something that falls apart. You have to believe there's something greater than what's going on in front of me. And I cannot cling on to what I just think sounds good. I have to cling to something higher that challenges me, that no matter what space or way I'm walking, I have to believe it's better than me. So that's why I cling to the word. I don't, people are like, how do you get through? How come you're always so happy? That's what and I'm like, I pray and meditate. I don't just sit there and, read the Bible and check. I think about what he's saying, because that is what kept me through the last 3 years. I can't even tell you what the last 3 years look like. It's like looking through, if you wrap some Ziploc bags together and put them up, it looks like you're seeing through something. You can't really see how it was, but we made it through, and you're literally walking a certain way that other people aren't walking, and they're just drowning, and So
let me address one thing you said, and then I want you to ask questions. That whole issue about my truth, your truth,
right,
her truth, his truth, their truth. Okay. Until we can soberly think about what we're saying.
Right.
Okay. How many suns are there?
One.
How many moons are there?
In our
What
galaxy.
are many moons? As we know, what we know here on Earth, there's one sun.
There's one sun.
Because there's not a sun for the south.
Right.
There's not a sun for the north. There's not a sun for the east. There's not a sun for the west. That one sun shines on all of us. That's truth.
Right.
Truth is what affects us all.
Right.
Okay. Now there are facts, okay, about my life that are different from facts about your life, and then that creates my reality.
Right.
Okay. I can have a different reality from you, but there's one truth.
Right.
Okay. And the problem is that we have not soberly considered what is the truth. Okay, we've got all in our feelings. I want to do it my way. I want to validate how I feel. I want to validate what I want to do. That's fine. You have a right to do all of that, but don't call it truth.
Right, because facts change.
Facts change. Truth does not.
Truth never changes. It's the same yesterday, today, and forever.
And that's the real. And so for those who have the courage, okay, to soberly acknowledge what truth is, those will be the ones who are able to pull themselves away from and separate themselves from the masses and not get caught up in what's happening with everyone else because everyone else is thinking a certain way. Nicodemus shows up to Jesus, right, at night. So nobody didn't see him.
Yeah, because he didn't want to. He knew that was his brother.
Well, his peers had a different way of thinking.
Right.
And they would have thought differently about him approaching Jesus at night. What you doing, man? So he approaches at night so nobody can see him.
Right.
Because he wants to know, how does this man think? I'm seeing what he's doing. So he says, Rabbi, we know that you're a teacher. You got to be a teacher. My thinking tells me that you can't be anything else except a teacher that comes from God. That's what my thinking tells me. Okay, but something's not gelling here. Okay, I can understand that, but I'm not really tracking with what you're really putting down. I'm not really tracking with what's really happening with you. Come on, talk to me. And Jesus goes in. He says, man, you got to be born again. Wait, hold on, born again? See, he never realized that Jesus was talking all along about his thinking.
Right.
Okay, and it had nothing to do with him being born again. He says you have to be born again, and that born again connotates being born from above. Okay, when you're born from above, that means that something enters into your understanding from above, and then it changes everything about you. That's your rebirth right there. See, you get a revelation, you get an understanding of something, of a kingdom, okay, that in this world seems to be hidden, but it's what's really governing this world, right?
I think that people don't understand even that passage. I was reading that passage today, that should I be born of a woman twice? You know, that's how Nicodemus responds. And the truth of the matter is, the Lord created us flesh, soul, and spirit. And when we get born again, I believe of course it's our spirit gets reborn. That's where the heart and the mind connect, and you truly become human. Because Jesus was already mastering that. And I think the thinking and the cultural accepted way of thinking is not enough. You've got to grasp something greater, so that no matter how society, because listen, this pandemic is just a proof of the world will always do this, and how it reacts and what happens to it. And you've got to hold on to something that doesn't shake. And the only thing that doesn't shake is an unshakable kingdom. But it is a kingdom that moves. And if you are born into that, you should be able to move as well. And that's why he says it's like the wind. The wind, you can't see where it comes, but you know it's real. You know it's real. There. Yeah. And I think people don't speak from the heart. They speak from the mind. So he's asking heart questions, but he can't receive the answer he's needing. Because when this is 100% of the truth of the time. When I ask God something I'm going through, I never know what to expect as his answer, because he's not me. He's truth. I'm walking in facts, and the only thing that is gonna be true for all our lives is change. So if facts are going to change, I've got to be willing to accept his answer that will change me, and he changes not. So if he's truth, I can't let my mind dictate what is my truth. Those are just bad terms for facts. Yeah. And to me, that's trauma, because when you're willing to say, this is my truth, what you're saying is, there's no other truth that can fix or change it, and your truth is little t. He's big T, and he will never be lowercase t.
See, then that's like saying, regardless of how long I stand out in the sun, I'm not going to get burned.
Correct. You're trying to prove something because of something that happened to you that didn't go the way. So I tell people all the time, I learned this the hard way. Expectations will break your heart, and if you're not careful, expectations will shape the way you think and see things, and then you speak from from an unintended place of brokenness.
Sure.
And now you're I mean, imagine a cracked screen on a phone or a camera. Your pictures don't come out right. The device is gorgeous and the shell is fine, but the inside, the pictures come out shifted, the light gets in and it burns. It will never work the way it was designed to.
Right.
Because of the truth.
Right.
So, anyway, yeah.
All right. Well, I want let's get some questions in.
Yes. So I had some great friends on my Facebook page. I asked them about how do you protect your mind, mental wellness. Really wanted them to think, and I love some of their answers. One of them said she protects what she listens to and what she watches. So how can someone learn, how can they practice what they take in? What are some steps or some advice? And if they're experiencing trauma from just turning on your device, that's why people don't even like to get on social media. You know, but how can they protect their ears, their gates? You know, how do you see that?
Well, certainly what your friend said there is certainly one of the ways that you do that. You got to guard your gates.
Mm-hmm.
And guard what's coming.
Because people hear that and they're like, oh, yeah.
So guarding your gate means being mindful of what you are taking in through your gates. Your ears, your eyes, your nose, your mouth. Every gate that's a gateway or a doorway or an opening or an entrance into your body, into your mind, into your spirit, into your emotions. Okay, a lot of times what happens on social media, and it's geared that way. You know, we're looking for something that moves us, right? And so when you're looking for something that moves you, you're going to see something that moves you. You might see something that moves you in a way that you didn't want to be moved, but nevertheless, you're going to see something that moves you. Well, it's all about that emotional pull. It's like the emotions become the dictators of what we pursue in life. Okay? And so that's the first thing that really needs to shift and change, is that we have to begin to not just bring our emotions under subjection, but we've got to begin to free our emotions from the bondages that they're in. You got to recognize that your emotions are in bondage. Okay? And most people don't really look at it that way, but that's the reality of it. Okay? If you watch social media, if you're on social media at all, okay, you are affected by this, and you have to make a choice. If you are aware, okay, that what you are seeing is someone's attempt to sway your thinking. See, now if you look at it from that standpoint, then at least you have the opportunity to step back and say, maybe it's not what it looks like. If you don't approach it from that standpoint, then you're just going to fall right into it, right? And you'll become, your mind will give in to what someone else is trying to shape your mind to give into. And that's what happens. Right. Okay? And so you gotta begin to guard your gates and begin to build internally. Build your internal processes. So what do I mean by that? Okay. Everything, my very, 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 very good friend, D. Jerome Garrett, he says this all the time. You know, everything starts and ends with a conversation. And I absolutely agree with him. That conversation happens here first.
Yes.
Okay. What's going on inside in here? What thoughts are you having? Okay. Your thoughts are the most intimate thing you possess. Those are things that you can hide from anyone. Okay. And so you've got to reconcile your thoughts and begin to shape your thoughts rather than having other things shape your thoughts. You shape your thoughts. How do you do that? Okay. Certainly by what you take in. What are you reading? You know, what are you intentionally and consistently reading? Okay. What are you saying to yourself? Right. What are you intentionally and consistently saying to yourself about yourself? But what is that? A confession? It's more than a confession. Right. But it certainly is a confession. But see, you've got to have an idea about who you are. Okay? And then you can build a language around who you are to protect who you are. If you don't know who you are, though, you know, then that's where you got to start. Find out who you are and what you're bringing to the table. Everything starts right there. Okay? If you try and do anything without knowing who you are, there's just come a point in time when you're going to have to double back and find out who you are. Okay? Because in any solution that you have, okay, it's only going to be as good as your understanding of who you are and what you're bringing to the table and what truth, real truth, not your truth. No, what real truth that has the ability to impact and affect every person, every human being. That's the truth that I'm talking about. Tapping into that truth and allowing that truth to begin to shape your thinking. Yeah. That's where it starts at, right there.
And you know, it's funny, years ago, a friend of mine wrote a great book, Scott Howe, about the creator and how we are the creatives and we are co-creators. And I was just thinking when you were talking, God wasn't insecure about what he was about to do, but he started it with a conversation. Yeah. He spoke to himself and declared, let there be light. So if you can't start something like that, like you're starting all of creation, you've got to literally be God to understand, okay, I know what I'm saying, what I'm doing, I know I have a plan. So if you're declaring that, you know, God never regretted what he did to this day. Mm-hmm. There's no regret. Now so it's like, I was just thinking, if God is speaking in confidence and he knows exactly what he's saying, we've got to speak in confidence. Every morning, I started doing it because the Lord's like, every time you log into work, what are people saying? Oh, good morning. And they have these funny gifts of yawning and stuff. And I said, you know what? No matter how bad my day has been going, I'm always going to say, great morning, everyone. So I do it every day. And one time I just didn't have it in me because I was grieving. And one person's like, is it a great morning, Nicole? And I thought, oh my gosh, people are paying attention to what you declare.
Yeah.
And this is just a team chat. It's not like I walk in the room and say it. I'm just putting my thing out there. I always put something positive because I want them to see that no matter how you feel, it's not the end of the day. It's not the end of the world. You have 24 hours. What are you going to do? What are you going to say? How are you going to let this conversation not trump that conversation? Right? You
notice, so the scripture says, okay, that Jesus was having a conversation with himself. In other words, he was thinking.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, those were his thoughts.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And so it's not so much you coming in the room and saying that to everyone else. If you haven't said it to yourself,
right,
then you're just performing.
Right. It's a lie, actually.
And that's what has happened, even as it concerns mental illness, right? And we've seen, the tragedy of Twitch, man. This brother, by everyone who knew him and or knew of him,
they called him a light, which I think is crazy.
Well, that's how he appeared, as a light, and I believe he was a light.
I think so too.
But he was giving that light to everybody else except himself.
Now, isn't that something?
Okay. And so that's why it has to begin there.
Yeah, you can't give out something you don't have. So
right.
So that means that he wasn't even putting the charger cord in himself to make sure he had enough. He was just, okay, I'm on 30%, here's 10, 10, 10. Yeah. You can't do that.
Giving. And that is why self-care is so vital. Yeah, I know it's a thing now. You can Google self-care and you get 150,000, but it is absolutely vital in this hour. Take care of yourself, and then you can take care of someone else. If you do not take care of yourself and you try to take care of someone else, you will burn out.
Say less. Listen, that's what God pointed out to me. That's why the scripture says, love others as you love yourself. This is actually a commandment, y'all.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying something that's out in
Matthew 22,
not
37
weird
through 40.
energy.
Yes.
That's the scripture. Yeah. Okay, so I've been meditating on that. Okay, so two people mentioned prayer, but I want to, something that this person mentioned is, she said she speaks empowering words over herself. That's awesome. She cries it out. She has good, faithful friends. She's not asking for input. She's asking for receiving, for them to listen. Mm-hmm. And then she avoids negative people. So that's a lot. Mm-hmm. How do people set up a routine? Or how do people find a way to release the trauma? Sometimes you can traumatize yourself with just what you say. I am totally coming against self-hate. I deal with that all the time. What do you suggest, or what can people do that are right today, practical, on how to release the negative? Because sometimes they're holding on to it. Sure.
And they may not even know that they're holding on to it.
Right.
And so those are the cases where you may need a coach. Okay? Someone who can help you to devise a plan or a process that you can put yourself in. Okay? You don't got to worry about the outcome. Just do the process. Stick to the process. The outcome's going to happen. For many people, if they have a process, okay, they can begin to wean themselves off of a lot of the things that, that are pulling on them, especially emotionally. So a lot of people don't understand that about emotions. Okay? Emotions, all of our emotions are the same. It's just that different ones of us give our emotions different levels of power.
That's deep, yeah. You're right.
Okay? Someone who, quote unquote, is emotional. Well, we're all emotional. Okay? But some people give more power to their emotions than others do. Okay? But it doesn't change the fact that the emotion has an assignment. Yeah. Every emotion has an assignment.
That's good.
Okay? And are you listening to that emotion? Okay? Is it just about the expression? It can't be just about the expression. Because that's emotion is supposed to help you get better. It's supposed to help you pivot. It's supposed to help you see clearer. It's supposed to help you feel These are things that emotion is supposed to help you do. But if you don't have some way of processing and evaluating your emotions and then putting them in their proper perspective, then you become slave to your emotions.
I love that you say you give an assignment. It's almost like, I'm going to give you a task. Your job is not to enslave me. I'm going to put you to work like this.
Yes.
This, I'm going to give you, and like, this is your job.
Yes, because remember, we were made for dominion. We were created to have dominion over the birds of the air, the fish of the sea, over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. Guess what? We are one of the creeping things that creep upon the earth.
That's good.
So you gotta have dominion over your own earth, and that's where most of us. Okay, that's where most of us falter and fail. We don't have dominion over our own earth.
This terra firma, not this terra firma.
Yeah.
This house
is
going to do this. This house has this wall has an assignment. We want it to not reflect, of course, during the podcast, but the assignment of this wall is to be here. Do we understand our assignment and what we are?
And what we are.
We have to
into the world.
I sometimes wonder: do we not get the assignments we want because we're not willing to manage the assignments?
Listen.
To be good stewards of our heart and our emotions. I'm just saying.
We lost our spiritual mother back in October last year. This lady was so impactful in our life, and I'm saying our because of my brothers and sisters who we share the same spiritual mom, right? This lady was sick for all the years that I've known her. Okay, 30-something years, over 30 years. She was sick the whole night. She suffered from sickle cell, right? Wow. She had sickle cell, but sickle cell didn't have her.
Wow.
Okay, she died 3 times. Okay, and yet lived. She died 3 times before I even met her.
What?
Okay, so this lady was phenomenal. Here's the thing. Here's my point: is that she never allowed sickle cell or anything else that was going on with her to stop her from being who she was. She knew who she was in the earth, and she was always that person. And so, you know, what's happening in our bodies, you know, we put a lot of weight on events and things that happen to us. But listen, I say this all the time, and most people who I say it to, they hear it, but they don't get it, right?
Yeah.
Every person is born with the innate ability to overcome any obstacle, endure any struggle, and outlast any trouble that gets in the way of their purpose.
Say it again. Because
every individual, every person born into the earth is born with the innate ability to overcome any obstacle, endure any struggle, and outlast any trouble that gets in the way of their purpose.
Come on.
So it's vital to know your purpose, because then nothing can stop you from doing and fulfilling and becoming and completing the assignment that you were sent here for. Not even your body. Your body can't stop you. Okay? Here's the thing I pull from in that all the time, is that Jesus was empowered with life by his purpose.
Right.
That's why he was able to say to the Pharisees and Sadducees and all those who were trying to kill him, he's like, you can't kill me. Okay? When it's time, I'm going to lay down my life.
Right, he's going to give up the ghost.
When it's time.
Right.
Until then, you can't kill me. Okay? I'm empowered with life to complete the assignment that I'm on right now. See, I don't know about you, but that's how I live. I live by that. I'm empowered with life to complete the assignment that I was sent here for. Right? When I'm done, I'll leave gladly, because I'm finished.
There's no assignments hidden in you, like, oh, I didn't do that.
I'm finished. Yeah. I'm going to finish my race. I'm going to finish my course, because I understand what my course is. I understand what my race is. I understand who I am in the earth. I understand how I'm supposed to show up. And so I just show up, right? Whether I show up dragging one leg, whether I show up in pain, I still show up and just be who I am.
Right.
So if you want to take back your mind, you really, really got to understand who you are. Because then you can respond like Jesus. Just give him the word, right? You know, oh, come on, you know, come on, man. Let's put this power that you got. We know you got some power. Put it to test, man. All you got to do is just command those stones over there. You know, they'll be bread so that you can even like,
I think when you're tempted by your purpose and you know who you are, you're not really tempted because you know your assignment. So it becomes easier to not be distracted. And I wanted to also give a shout out because the people who posted, I'm going to give their names. I feel like I should. Misty Hood, who talks about listening. Miss Shirley Hernandez Ramirez, I love her with prayer. Charmaine with the friends and the prayer. And then Mark with, I love this guy because he did.
I know Mark.
Yeah, because we did the podcasting. Mark, we miss you. He talks about finds peace and solace, quiet time. I want you to talk about not just be still and know that I'm God, but sometimes this needs to be quiet so we can, just talk about solace and quiet. How is it that we lose?
Well, that whole thing about meditation, right? Sometimes we think about people who do yoga, right? They sit and they meditate. There is something so spiritual about that. Yeah. Right? And if you just embrace just that part of it, just the sitting quietly, right? Sitting in your own space, right? Allowing yourself to just be in that moment without any care and any concern, without being pulled on, without being pushed, without being manipulated, without being anything. Just be in a moment. Yoga, and don't get me wrong, I don't practice yoga because I don't have to. All right, I know how to get quiet and just sit in my own space because that's all you're really doing. Sitting in your space. And what are you meditating on? I'm meditating on the Lord. I'm meditating on what He has said about me. I'm meditating on who He has said that I am. And I'm repeating that back to myself. That's what I'm doing during my time of meditation. I'm reminding myself, I'm reminding God of what He said and reminding myself of what God said during my times of meditation.
That's good.
I'm building, and reinforcing my thoughts through meditation.
That's good.
And then so when I begin to make confessions, my confessions come out of my meditations. See, a lot of times you get people who are trying to make confessions, they get tapes and they listen to them, and all that's great, right? But those confessions aren't coming out of their meditations. They're coming off of their tape. That's somebody else's meditation.
That's someone else's.
No, your confession should come out of your your time of reflecting on who you are, right? And then you can say with peace and with confidence, listen, if you need a coach, right, I know one.
So he has please look him up, Getting Clear. Pastor Tim is actually a life coach, and he has helped me amongst others. So please, he's not just saying that. It's just not a shameless plug. It's his purpose.
No, that's what I do.
That's what he does.
Listen, I started writing. I've been writing poetry for as long as I can remember. And I've always loved poetry. But there came a point in time when I had to recognize that it was more than just poetry.
Right.
Okay. Because what I was writing, I first started writing it. I was just writing it to just keep my own sanity.
Right.
Okay. Keep myself from hurting somebody. Okay. And I would always pass it by my friend Merrill McQueen, and he was my sounding boy, man. Everything I wrote, I pass it through Merrill. And he said, "Man, you should put this in a book." He always said that, and I was like, Merrill, come on, man. This is for me. You should put this in a book. Every time I brought a new piece to him, he would say that. So eventually I put it in a book, right? My first book was called Confessions of Faith, The Art of Renewing the Mind. Duh, look at that. The Art of Renewing the Mind. And so I began, and then I created the book, what they used to call a chapbook. Okay, it's a little small book. I velo bound it, but I think it had like 31 poems in it, right? But these were the most powerful poems. And most of them were I am poems. I had no idea what that little chapbook was going to become, right? I just knew that what I wrote gave me life. And what I wrote came out of my meditation, okay? And my meditation came out of what I understood and knew about what God said about me.
Yeah.
So all of my I am poems were based upon what God has said about me. They would just had, I put my flavor on them, my uniqueness, my spin, right? But that's what they all were. One of the poems, I'm a branch that grows from the vine. My mission is to rise as high as I can, as long as I can, bearing as much fruit as I can along the way.
Yes.
No one can stop me because I'm connected to the vine. If you cut me, I'll grow longer, stronger, and faster. If you put something in my way, I'll go over it, around it, sometimes even under it, or I'll find a crack and go through it. I'll embrace every obstacle along the way, using each one as a rung on a ladder. Every adversity gives me the strength I need to climb, and every triumph gives me the courage and hunger I need to prepare for the next level. This is who I am. This is my destiny, for I was born to rise. See, that's the kind of stuff that came out of my meditation and became and it ended up in a book. Okay, I said all that to say this: is that those 31 poems, and there were some more that were added to it, became the basis of a curriculum that we call motivational poetry technology, that's designed to bring insight to the mind, okay, to bring encouragement to the heart, to bring uplifting, right, to the spirit, and to bring power to the will, give you the power to actually do, to actually be what you've been called to be in the earth. That's what the poetry does. And so we created a curriculum and built a whole system around it. We call it the frame system, right? Where we frame our future and shape our destiny with what we are saying about ourselves.
And you know, that's powerful because it came from the place of not listening to something and repeating it.
No.
You have to become authentic. You only become authentic. Listen, people used to ask me, and I got it, I stole it from Catherine Coleman. Didn't really, but I felt that it was true. Catherine Coleman, if you don't know who she is, powerful woman of God from years ago. Benny Hinn basically mimicked.
Yeah.
And she laid hands on him. Not mimicked because he has his own thing, but that's kind of where he got his influence from. Yeah. And she had asked, and somebody had asked me the same question. I gave the same answer because it was true. And she gave an answer. You know, you have these big crusades. She had lots of celebrities who followed her, were friends with her. And Sid Roth really kicked off his show from being under her. Yeah. And they had said, you know, how do you prepare for a meeting? You know, what's your first steps? You know, what are the things that you do? You know, share with us. And this is not like, you know, God bless Christian television, but this is like big cameras, you know, primetime news. And they're like holding the mic in front of her, and she said, I stay ready. And I felt like, man, the first time I heard that, I was struck like, okay, how does that happen? But I felt like that was such an amazing, those 3 words changed my life, especially when I was in ministry. But the whole idea was the only way to stay ready, just like those who are in the military or those who serve in different careers that are like really on call all the time, you have to find a place where you have to sit and meditate and you have to focus. And I found myself that I didn't wait on the church service to give me what I needed from God. I didn't wait on the friend or the right mentor to call me. Mm-hmm. Those things help, and there's a place for that. But not to lean on it. That's not my go-to. My go-to is Him. If I have the same access as you, the veil is torn, I need to go someplace quiet and get quiet. And so, shout out to my mom. She makes fun of me all the time. I'll walk out of my room if I'm off like at 11 a.m. But I've been up since 7, 8 o'clock. What have you been doing in your room? I've been meditating, and I needed time. I needed time to not only connect to Him, but to hear from Him and to get my own. And it comes in different ways. And people would ask me, how did you get that in God? Or when you prayed today? Yeah, well, because I spent time with that person. Mm-hmm. Last one. Oh, yeah, we have a question? Yes.
Someone would like to know the name of the book of poems that you wrote.
Ooh.
It's called A Dreamer's Diary. You can get it on Amazon. It's called The Dreamer's Diary by Tim Jones, the motivational poet. They're the original motivational poet now, because somebody started trying to copy me. But it's called A Dreamer's Diary.
All right, any other questions? Okay, wonderful. So, I had another friend, I love this girl, I haven't seen her in a while, Catherine Alzate, which she's in Colombia. Mm-hmm. She said, when she talks about, how do you protect your mind, and one of the things she said, learn to make her, that she when she has a decision, she focuses her thoughts and energy on that and what the word says on that decision. That's a good word. And she says, she actually quoted Philippians 4, whatever is noble, whatever is true, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think on such these things.
Mm-hmm.
So, this is what we call positive thinking, or where people step in with motivational thinking. But why is it? It does work, but why is that so powerful? The way, she's mentioning it, and she's a really awesome woman. But why is that so important when it comes to?
Because it's a principle.
Yeah?
It's a principle. Everything, and not just everything in the Bible, everything in life.
Right.
Okay? Principles, patterns, and practices.
Yeah.
Okay? Everything is rooted and grounded in a principle. Okay? And then you discover the pattern that's associated with that principle, and you begin to practice it. Okay? And that's how you can bring yourself into alignment with things that work. Okay? But principles, patterns, and practices, if you look at that scripture, what Paul is doing is outlining a principle, right? And when he gets to verse 8, he says, finally, in other words, after that, it starts with, rejoicing always, rejoice always, right? And be anxious for nothing, be prayerful about everything, right? With thanksgiving, make your requests known to God, and the peace of God, okay? He didn't say, make your requests and ask God for peace. No, he says, make your requests known to God. So first of all, rejoice, be thankful, okay, and make your requests known. When you do that, the peace of God that passes all understanding will rule and guard your heart and mind. Now, nowhere in there did it say to ask for that. It says to make your requests known, whatever it is that you have need of, and the peace comes when your protocol is right.
So let me insert here. Does that mean that we actually have to open our mouths and talk about the trauma and things that are bothering us?
Absolutely.
Can you address that? Because I've had
stuff.
pastors say, "Stop telling God how you feel," and I'm like, "Oh my goodness." That's why I'm bringing that up, because people are thinking, "How do I get that peace?" And
listen. People who can't tell God how they feel, they are people who are internalizing trauma.
Wow.
Okay, and here's what we learn: scientific studies. Okay, trauma changes the brain. It changes who you are. You become someone else.
It changes your chemistry.
It changes the very chemistry of who you are. If you don't deal with that trauma, you become someone else. Okay? So not being able to talk, if you can't talk to God about who can you talk to if you can't talk to God? Come on, man. No. You make your request known, the peace of God comes.
Right.
And then, now here's where you pick up. Finally, brethren, okay? Think on these things. Whatsoever things are good, lovely, of good report, virtuous. You've got to control your thinking. You've got to manage your thinking. That's your part. I prayed for something, right? Well, after you prayed, now you got to manage your thinking. Because if you don't manage your thinking, when what you prayed for doesn't happen tomorrow like you thought it was going to happen, then what happens to your faith? Exactly. So you have to manage your thinking so that your thoughts don't take you to and start making you believe that God is a liar, that his word doesn't work. No, manage your thinking and understand that God is who he says he is, and that he never gives you a timetable. Very seldom I say it that way. I don't like using never. I haven't gotten any timetables.
Very few.
Okay.
Very few.
But he's faithful.
Yes.
We've seen him. We've experienced his faithfulness, and so that is a principle, and that's why it's so important. The power of the tongue, being life and death being in the power of the tongue. It's a principle, right? Many people talk about it and quote it, and yet still don't utilize it the way it's supposed to be utilized. We don't understand how powerful that really, really is. To the degree that you can literally reshape. If you reshape your thinking, you'll reshape your speaking. If you reshape your speaking, you'll reshape your living. Now that's the principle. Scriptures say, I believe, so I spoke.
Right.
Okay? It's principle. And so we have to learn how to practice the principles. But in order to practice the principles, you got to see the pattern. You got to see it.
Let me say this. When I used to hear principle, I used to be like, used to go over my head. And then Dr. Monroe said this thing one day. If you jump off of a house or jump out of a tree, there's a principle in place. What is the principle in place? Gravity. Y'all know if I let go of my phone, it's not going to levitate. God help me if it does. So, when he says a principle, this is something that's actually part of truth. It's going to happen. Now, when you jump out of a tree, that's immediate. When you pray to God and confess and you leave it, we don't know the timetable, so we cannot put expectations because that will cause doubt and I think a trauma that you put upon yourself. I've had to take that timetable off and go, God, you respond when it's time. And that has allowed me to then have to really pull on hope.
Yeah.
Now
let me say this, because I can hear.
That, but anyways.
I can hear people, because I know people who are like this, They pray in a certain way because their faith is that way, right? Some people will have expectations of God. Okay, I'm not the one to tell you don't have any expectations of God. If that's where your faith is, that's where your faith is. But I'm talking about, something that any of us can do.
Right.
So everyone don't have the same level of faith.
That's right.
But everyone can operate a principle.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And so that's what I'm talking about with that. We're coming up to the top of the hour here. Any other questions, babe? No. Okay. Awesome. So let me say this, and as we bring this to,
with my questions.
As we bring this to, I was going to say, if you got more, I'll answer them on another format.
Yeah.
But I want to be true to the time as much as possible.
Yeah.
I will say this. Listen, if you're struggling in any way in your thought life, because what I'm saying to you tonight is that there are some things that are coming our way that we're going to be faced with that's going to really challenge us in such a way that if you do not have a system in place where you're able to manage your thinking properly, okay, and really connect yourself with what truth really is, then it becomes easy for you to be deceived. Okay, the scriptures say, Jesus said in these last days, if it were possible, that even the elect would be deceived. Okay, so if it were possible, so that means that it's not possible. Okay, and why is it not possible? I've often asked that question. Part of that question was answered for me in Romans 8 by Paul. Okay, Paul began to talk about it in Romans 8 and 18. He says, I'm considering this. I'm thinking about this, and it seems to me that the things that I'm going through right now, these present sufferings, are not even worthy to be compared to the glory that's coming my way. That's my thinking right now. I'm considering that. Well, in verse 28, he says, I know that all things work together for good to those who are called according to his purpose. So he moved from just considering it to now he came into a knowledge of it. Mm-hmm. But by the time he gets to verse 38, same passage of scripture, same chapter, he gets to 38 and he says, I am persuaded that neither height nor depth, things present nor things to come, nothing can separate me from the love of God. So there was a progression of I'm considering this, I'm thinking about this, to a place where I know, to a place where I'm persuaded. I am saying to you, brothers and sisters, people who are listening, anyone, you need to be persuaded in what you believe. You need to be persuaded about what you believe. Now, I didn't say hoodwink. I didn't say brainwashed. I said persuaded. Persuaded is because you have come to a place where you have evaluated within your own self, within your own sense of truth that lies within you, because every person has some truth within them. They have some light within them. The scriptures say that the spirit of man is the candle of the Lord. So all of us have some light in us, and God is trying to connect with that light. But his connecting with that light is different from what's happening in the world. And we've gotten it a little twisted. And Nicole says the kingdom's not upside down, we're upside down. I agree with that. We're upside down in our thinking and how we process things. So let's get right side up. Let's get sober minded. Let's really begin to understand what truth really is. If you want to have another conversation about truth, hit me up, man. We can talk about truth, because truth can be proven. And truth doesn't change. Facts, your reality, it can change. In fact, most times facts do change. Just give it enough time. But truth is solid. Okay? Truth cannot be repealed by man. It's what we live by. It's what holds the world together. So let's help each other to not be caught up in the whirlwind of having our minds controlled and taken over by a spirit that wants to really pull us away from who we are. No. Let's discover who we are. Let's redefine who we are. And let's live the lives that we were born to live, that we were destined for. Let's discover why we're here on the earth. And let's be about the business of leaving what we brought here to the earth in the earth. That's what I want to help you to do. So that's all for tonight, man. Listen, if you want to watch those other videos of the other Ask Pastor Tims, go to YouTube, Getting Clear with Tim Jones on YouTube. Okay? And you'll be able to catch them there. Anything else you want to say?
I do. There's one thing I wanted to say is that everything that we're saying or anything we've learned, and I'm still learning, is that I had to take my time, that solace time, that time in prayer. I had to practice it every day. Not to see results or to brag or to become something more spiritual. Just for me, my own sanity.
Yeah.
And I want to encourage you, open your mouth and find out what you're thinking. Sometimes God has had me write down what I'm thinking, and I look and I'm either disgusted or caught up or surprised. And it's good to examine that so you know where you're at, so you see the trauma or you see the healing. So I just want to encourage people that what he's saying is right, but we have to practice it every day. And if you're watching this, you're alive, you're breathing, that's enough to rejoice with. When he says rejoice, I just want to start with, this is how you can get started. And then you will come to the place where you see the results and the confidence. That's all I want to say.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Nicole, for joining me tonight. It was fun.
Great.
It was a pleasure.
Fun. This is good.
And until next time, we'll see you next time on Ask Pastor Tim. Remember, live full and die empty.